What's up, gardening friends? How's everybody doing? I hope you're good, because I am great. I have an unboxing to do, and this is a rather special unboxing. You can see I have already opened it up and unboxed it. I always do that just to make sure if there's anything with like my address or full name or anything on it that's not going to be in the video, just because, you know, stranger danger. Like, y'all are fantastic, but I don't know who's going to watch these videos sometimes. You got to be careful. Anyways, as the label suggests, this is from Gavin's garden. A little boy in his mom's garden, exotic tropical hibiscus, plumerias, and more. And here is the link to their Etsy shop. This is special to me because this is from one of y'all, being Tiffany and Gavin. Tiffany and Gavin have been watching the channel. Speaking of which, hey Gavin, how's it going? What's up, bud? And Gavin is getting very into gardening. They've opened up their own Etsy shop. Told me about it and I was like, awesome, I want in. What do you got? So I got on, picked something out. This isn't like a paid promotion or anything like that. I paid for it. And here we have a lovely Adenium. I've been wanting to get a new desert rose for a pretty long time, but I'm extremely picky. And I thought, well, this is perfect because it's not going to be as much to me about what kind of crazy mix is it. Does it, you know, what the flowers look like? It's a little bit more sentimental. I have my very own Gavin plant. That's what I will be calling it. Typically, I would be wearing gloves when handling one of these guys because the sap can be irritating. Yeah, nice looking caudex starting to twist and do its thing. Got some branches on it. The male was kind of wonky here. This ended up sitting in an office complex for a few days before I could get it home because of all the snow and whatnot. But I think that looks pretty good for sitting in a box for quite a while, actually. Even not having sat in a box looks pretty darn good. So, it's a cute little plant, nice size. I'm going to go ahead and pot this up. Not doing anything crazy fancy with it because it's winter. These Adeniums, they're not really doing anything right now, so I don't want to go over the top. Oh, and they did send this lovely note. Thank you very, very, very much. I'm not going to read that on camera, but it was very nice of you. I had been planning on potting this up in this big lovely clay pot here. I like to use clay with desert roses. It dries a lot faster. But I actually think this is going to be too big. To get going with rooting and whatnot, this is going to have a lot of extra space in it that's going to retain moisture, not dry out as quickly. You can see even though it appears to be clay, it is clay, but the inside of it is glazed, so it's not going to dry out quite as quickly as I'm probably going to want it to, since especially because it's dormant right now. Well, mostly dormant. It's the time of year it's going into dormancy soon, is what I should say. So instead of overcomplicating things, I'm just going to use a small little terracotta pot. Have some gravel in the bottom. This will work fine. With a desert rose, I like to use a pot that's short and wide because that's how you encourage a nice, thick, girthy caudex to get growing. Like I said, pretty soon this plant's just going to be chilling. It's in recovery mode. I want it to have access to water when I water it. I'm just going to go with this little pot for now, and then in the springtime, when I start to see the active growth again, I'll go ahead and pot it up into something shorter, wider, and do something a little bit more crazy and fun with it. I'm just using a standard cactus mix. This is Miracle Grow cactus mix. They call it cactus palm and citrus mix. I haven't ever been crazy about that because those are not plants that always need the same soil, so it's an odd combination to me. I have added a very hefty amount of fine sand, medium grade sand, perlite to this, and just a little bit of Espoma biotone, just a teeny tiny bit. And there are a few pieces of larger gravel in here as well. It's important that it's a very, very, very airy mix that will drain sharply. The water needs to move right through it. It's not something that's going to retain moisture for a very long time. And I think this should do the trick just fine. There have been times when I've repotted a desert rose and my mixture was a lot of gravel and sand and very little soil. But like I said, since this guy, he's in recovery mode from shipping and whatnot, that's why I want to use something that does have some organic material in it, as well as that Espoma biotone that helps encourage root growth. And here's that Espoma, if you want to know what I was talking about. Organic biotone starter, plant food plus mycorrhiza, promotes bigger blooms and roots. Yeah, it has lots of good stuff in it that helps get the good bacteria and fungi going around the roots of the plants. Those break things down and in turn release nitrogen. And it does far more than that. It's also a fertilizer, but it just helps encourage a really nice healthy root system. I can see here the line that I'm going to be planting this out is just about perfect. It might end up being a little bit higher than it probably should be, but it should be all right. I think this will work. You can see the difference in color. So that's how you tell where all the lightness is, where that green line is that's in there. That's where you want the soil line to be. And it sticks up probably just a smidge higher than I would want it to, but like I said, I think that should be okay, and I can fool around with it a little bit and get it down in there. I'll go ahead and get some soil in here and start moving things around and packing it down. Just a light layer, and then I'm gonna pack it in a little bit, and then a light layer and pack it in a little bit. I like doing it that way just because it helps keep the plant growth up, helps keep things up straight, that is, as I'm potting it in, so it's not wonky and I don't have to fuss with it too much once the pot's full of soil. Okay, now that that's potted up, go ahead and set this into a drainage dish. Drainage dish that has a pretty hefty amount of gravel in the bottom. That's so that water can be down here, not wick its way back up into the pot. The clay pots do wick moisture, so I'm gonna have to keep an eye on that. Go ahead and give this guy its first drink. Want to get that nice and wet, make sure that the water is running all the way out the bottom. For the initial watering, I'm just kind of checking the drainage, making sure it goes nice and quickly, and letting the soil move down, so this way I can see where I need to add more soil. This is kind of an important step anytime I use a mixture that has a lot of perlite in it. The reason for that is that the perlite, it floats, and when there's a lot of perlite and you add the water, sometimes it kind of bubbles up and displaces the soil a little bit, so I like to do this just to make sure everything gets settled in properly. Went ahead and I top dressed this with just a little bit of gravel. That was just for aesthetics. It's actually kind of risky to do this because this can actually withhold the pot from drying, from the soil from drying as quickly as it should, but I'm just gonna keep a close eye on it. I like to look at gravel instead of soil. And it's gonna help add a little bit of stability here, even though I think that it should be just fine. Like I said, I have to keep an eye on this. I wanna make sure that no water wicks up and the clay pot gets wet. I want this to dry very, very, very quickly. It's kind of a key thing with the adeniums. You don't want them to stay wet for a long time. It's not that they don't like to be watered, they just don't want to be sitting in wet soil. It needs to dry quickly. In fact, you can water them fairly frequently. When I've had mine outdoors in the summertime, rain and everything, they just love it and they thrive. That's because I always have them in a soil that dries very, very, very fast. Since this is kind of a wonky time of year, I am going to be keeping a close eye on this for the next few days, just because I don't know if from being in a box in the darkness and the cool weather, if that will have triggered it to go into dormancy. If it has, then I'm not going to be watering this very much at all. However, it's also very, very possible that it may be warm enough in here that the plant decides, hey, I'm gonna go ahead and grow, which is fine. You get better growth out of these guys though if you make sure they get their dormancy, their winter dormancy. And it's really not far off from getting that. So I'm gonna wait and see what the plant wants to do. If this were one that I had had for a while and it was already rooted into its pot, I'd have this in the windowsill in a nice cool window, and I would let it start to move into its own dormancy on its own, where it's getting nice cool temperatures at nighttime, a little bit less sunlight and reduced watering, and it would drop those leaves and move on to doing that thing on its own. This will probably do that as well. But like I said, I'm just going to kind of see what it wants to do. I'm going to make sure that soil dries out very thoroughly. It probably won't be watered for a couple more days. And humidity, it's really not necessary to do this with a desert rose, but just because it may want to go into a more active growth right now, I want to make sure that there's some moisture around it, because there's a lot of air circulation out here, which is fantastic for a desert rose. They like air to be moving around them, but it's extremely dry, which is also fine for them. It's because it needs to root out a little bit. I would like to see it do a little bit of growing. If not, it's okay. It'll go into its dormancy, and then in the springtime, I'll move it to where it's going to get more light and then increase its watering when I start to see some movement in the plant, and it will do all of that on its own. The Codex in here has a lot of reserved energy, so I'm not too worried about it. As long as it's not in bright, intense light with a lot of heat, then it's going to do its thing and chill out and wait and rest. So that's what I'm dealing with there. It's been down here at the bottom of the screen, but I should have mentioned when I unboxed this that this is the Plum Beauty is the name of this variety of this adenium. It has really pretty purpley pink flowers, just an overall awesome looking plant. I'm really happy with it. I'm super excited to start getting some growth and some flowers out of this in the springtime, and I'll of course be keeping everybody updated on that. And this really, just simply potting this up and looking at it, has me wanting to get back into the adeniums again. So I'm really glad that this is what I decided to order. In fact, I will probably be ordering more, so I went ahead and made a tag. I know the handwriting's terrible. I couldn't find a fine tip Sharpie, so had to use a thick one, and I have bad handwriting as it is. That's a variety of Plum Beauty. Made sure I put Gavin and Tiffany on there. That way I'll always remember this is my Gavin plant. I was just on checking out their Etsy shop. They have a lot of stuff up for sale right now. Great variety, some beautiful hibiscus and all types of things. So get on there, check them out. I'm very pleased with this. I think it's a nice looking plant. I did mention before, this sat in the box for several extra days, like 4 extra days, because it got trapped downtown in an office building. It's a whole long story, but that's not their fault. That's on me. The weather was just too bad to get down to go pick it up. So that's what that's about. I think it's fine. It looks totally fine to me. It looks healthy, nice codex on it. Good, healthy plant. Now, in the spring, when I do start to see some active growth in this guy, I'm going to move it into a much more shallow pot. I'm going to be doing some things to help encourage a really healthy, thick codex to grow out of it. There's some tips and tricks there, some things you can do to get that really neat stubby growth on the codex. It's all the different movement and whatnot. They're just neat plants. I love a desert rose. That is a broad name. There are lots of different types of adeniums. This is just your standard, but a fun variety. It's supposed to be a prolific bloomer, so that's really cool. All right, that's gonna do it though. Thank you, Gavin, Tiffany, for letting me know about your Etsy shop and all the awesome things you have going on in there. Gavin, way to go. Super proud of you out there doing your plant thing, learning about gardening. I think it's awesome that you're into plants. That's gonna do it for today's video. I hope everybody's doing well. Don't forget to leave the video a thumbs up. It helps the channel a lot. I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for doing that. And if you haven't already and you'd like to, subscribe as well. I upload multiple times a week and hit that notification bell. That way you know when new videos come out. All my social media is down in the description. Follow me and I'll follow you back. I have a lot of fun seeing everybody's pictures and what everybody's doing out in their gardens. And comment down below. I know these are very popular plants. A lot of people have lots of fun varieties. Let me know what you've been doing with some of yours. And like I said, I'm going to be keeping an eye on this. Want to make sure that dries out very quickly. One of the reasons the gravel on top isn't necessarily the best idea, but it looks pretty. I'm going to make sure it doesn't stay wet, because if it's wet and up against that codex, it could rot it. But don't worry, it's going to be okay. I know what to look out for. Don't worry. I hope everybody's doing well. And as always, and most importantly, everybody, keep on growing. Bye-bye.